Gabe, we have not had a podcast episode in over 12 months. And over these past 12 months, we have seen some pretty big developments in not only the tech field, but just life in general with the enhancements with AI. We've seen OpenAI, we've seen Google Gemini AI. You and I have been playing a lot with Microsoft Copilot, and we've really begun to see how AI can be used in our day-to-day lives. Not only that, but I also was thinking about our podcast, and I realized we never did proper introductions to who we are and how we got into marketing. So one of the things I want to talk about today is just that. But also, Gabe, you had a fantastic article you found online about how AI and how these college graduates are coming about. And I really wanted to dive into that today as well. All right, Gabe, so you found this article online. Do you want to walk us through this article a little bit and what you found?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be back, Zach. This feels so good to be talking to you again on a podcast. I'm so excited.
I can't believe it's been 2 years. You know, I mentioned we missed 12 months of content, but man, it has been a while.
It has been a minute, and we're really excited to be back and to be talking about all things nerdy tech and, you know, AI and all of this good stuff and how it's going to intersect from a marketing perspective and a technology perspective. These are fun topics that Zach and I. Basically, you're getting an inside look into Zach and I's text message exchanges that we have on a regular basis. So, and now
a lot of Excel memes in there. A lot of Excel memes.
Yes, that's true. No doubt about that. But to go back to the article that Zach was talking about, so this article I saw was about marketing students and people with marketing degrees specifically, and how 60% of students with marketing degrees are working high school level jobs 5 years after graduation. And that number was pretty shocking to me. And then I started reading through and getting a little bit more insight into why that is. And there's really a couple of reasons for this. One, there's been a massive influx of people going and getting marketing degrees. The number of people that are interviewing for marketing roles has tripled since 2021. So you've got this huge influx of people, especially with creative marketing interests coming into the field. And at the same time, you have AI coming out that is allowing people to be much more efficient around those creative efforts, whether that's video creation, which, Zach, I know that's something you're very passionate about, or graphic design. I know that's something you're also very passionate about. But you know, there are huge advancements in tools that are allowing people to be much more efficient. So you've got both of these things happening at the same time: a massive increase in people coming into the field and more efficiency through AI, which is making it so people don't want to hire folks in those specific fields, which is creating a lot of problems for folks who are trying to get marketing jobs.
I love the term you just used there, Gabe, efficiency in AI, because I feel like this AI conversation has really split into, oh, AI can totally take over my job, or I don't really need AI, right? Like, I feel like we kind of have two sides, but efficiency in AI. And I think back to, like, even when I was in high school, I would have been dangerous with AI, I feel like. So I'm very lucky it wasn't really popular at the time, or the access. You know, we have OpenAI with ChatGPT now. Everyone can go on and kind of ask questions. Google's got their AI, like I mentioned. So I'm kind of glad it wasn't readily available at the time, because I would have definitely been dangerous. But to your point there, you know, just giving a little background on myself, the creative side of marketing is why I'm in the field today. And, you know, when I went to college, when I applied to college, actually, it was a STEM major, right? Like, that was what I was interested in. And what I ended up starting my freshman year in was business management. But I still had that creative side. And that's really what, growing up, making home videos, editing videos, graphic design, you know me, I love critiquing and creating, So combining all of those, at the time, I wasn't even thinking about marketing. I was business management. I was going to be like next businessman. And not to like hate on all of the business management majors or business administration majors we have in our audience, but it wasn't for me. And I didn't know that until May 17th, 2017. And the reason I bring up that date is because we did a previous episode called What Does the Internet Know About Me? And if you go back and watch that video, you may figure out why I brought that date up. It's not a date I have memorized, but again, just using that data the internet knows about me. But that's the date I went into marketing. And I always tell this story. One of my best friends from college, I had just taken a final. I just got on a bus, and I haven't seen him for quite a while at the time. And he comes up and he's telling me about this new job he has and how he's going to hire an intern. And, he's kind of bringing me into the loop. And he's like, let's stay in touch. And I was like, all right, let's do that. And, over the summer, we continued talking. And come August, we got back together on campus. And next thing I knew, not only was I a marketing intern, but I was also picking up that study. I was taking new classes on marketing and communication and the different components there. So that's kind of how I got in. From there, again, it was internship after internship through college, really focusing on graphic design and creative. One of my internships my senior year of college was at a hospital. And at the time, I wasn't a graphic design pro at all. However, I was working with one. So you learn a lot of the tricks of the trade at that point. And again, that allowed me to really focus on the creative aspect, right? And from there, graduation, my first job out of college was working on a rebranding and a website design at a financial institution. So again, taking that creative journey and applying everything we learned in college. And again, all of this practice with the Adobe suite, with Canva from day one, right? As much as I like to hate on Canva, that's one of the initial points back in high school. It's like, oh, this is a pretty cool tool. And then you slowly get into the Adobe side. But, ultimately, the next phase of this was using the data behind marketing. And that's really where I'm at today. Using the data, what do we know about our subscribers, or what do we know about our customers in those situations? And how can we best, apply the correct creative with them? Or how can we best optimize that customer experience? So, Gabe, I know I always joke that you and I combined, we have about 25 years of experience, and I'm happy to contribute any number to that total. But that's kind of my experience. Not as long, not as in depth, but again, having that creative side, and then to your point with that article, going through college, taking that creative and now applying it into the real world. That's kind of where I'm at today. But Gabe, to your point, how long have you been interested in marketing? Because I'm believing that this is not a field that you initially started out in.
Not a field that I started out in at all. But I want to go back to something you said there, Zach, and I want to give you credit for something, which is during college you talked about all the internships that you did, across various things. I've been out of college a lot longer than Zach, as you can probably imagine. But that was where I started my career as well, was as an intern. And I think that's something that I always encourage. I feel like 100 years old saying this, but I always encourage younger people to do. But an internship is a fantastic way to actually get real world experience. Because one of the things that people struggle with is they come out of school, if they haven't had any real world experience, then they're just sort of stuck. Because if people want any level of experience, even if it's 1 year, 2 years, whatever, you got nothing, right? You've got a resume that says you have a degree, and that's pretty much it. And I've seen a lot of those resumes. They're pretty light, and it's difficult to differentiate yourself. So what Zach did, I think what a lot of folks do is really, really smart to go out and get that real world experience, so that as you're getting into the field, you actually have some level of understanding of what it is that you're actually going to be doing. Zach, not to totally put you on the spot here, but I'm just going to ask you this question. We didn't prep this one. I mean, do you feel like you learned more in internships or in college?
This is a sensitive subject in my family. I know my dad and I flip-flopped on this one, but the way I've always explained it is I couldn't have gotten the internships I got without going to college. And then at the same time, everything I learned in college, I applied in those internships. And part of this too, and I really hope the right people listen to this podcast. I have neighbors that were my professors in college, right? Or, my LinkedIn connections here. But I think of two professors that I took classes from. One was my intro to marketing, my 3000 level marketing class, the first marketing class I ever took. And that's really the class that got me into the field. Awesome professor, great job teaching, engaging students. There was 200 people in this class, but I can still say it was one of my favorite classes. And it's a class, even today when we talk about, the 7 P's of marketing, it's still, theory that I use today in my day-to-day job. Mm-hmm. And then one other professor, and this was a professor at the time where I was almost annoyed by, right? They kept pushing us. They were very critical in their grading, or asking you to redo things. And at the time when I took that class, I thought, I know graphic design. I know what I'm doing, right? And I may have known graphic design, but I didn't know how to relate graphic design to an actual marketing campaign, right? Like there's a difference between making fancy graphics or making fancy collateral for print, social media, and then applying the data or your audience segments behind that, the actual creative, the body copy, all of that kind of messaging that goes into that. And that was one of the classes where that professor, as much as I didn't like it at the time, at the end of the day, it's one of those classes where it made me a better student and made me better in my field as well. And again, that's another class that even today, and that was an intro to advertising class. And again, even today, I'm thinking back to that class. What would this professor say? Like, what would they allow me to proceed with this, or kind of keeping that in mind too. But I absolutely do think that the internships and the college experience went hand in hand, right? I couldn't have done one without the other. I definitely learned from both. My classes taught me how to do things in my internships, but my internships definitely did prepare me for that role right outside of college, right? And from there, I'm one of those people that says you're always learning, right? So from there, it's just been this continued path of learning new material.
Yeah, for sure. And it's thinking back to college. Like I said, it's been a lot longer for me than it has been for you. But I still
I thought we graduated together. Wasn't I thought you were there.
I still remember specific professors that Jack Wegman, who was an economics professor I had, and he was that version for me, right? Where you were talking about the one who pushed you and really made it hard on you, and I'm glad that he did that at the time, but I hated the class at that exact moment, right? But I learned so much about how to think and how to move forward, this is one of this whole idea of understanding what you know and where you're actually at on a knowledge scale. I think is something that's really important, and I think about this all of the time. I'm fairly deep into my career now, right? There's some things that I know very well, but there's also things that I think I know better than I actually know. And I know I'm always telling you this about Dunning-Kruger effect, right? And there's a famous chart, and there's two lines on the chart. The vertical is confidence, and the horizontal is wisdom. And the chart basically says that when you start to learn something, you really know nothing, but you think you know a lot more than you actually know, right? You think your wisdom is a lot higher. And you actually call that the peak of Mount Stupid, because you've just started learning something and you think you're really knowledgeable about it, but you're actually super dumb. And then you realize very quickly, oh crap, I know nothing. And you move down this line very quickly until you get into the valley of despair. And you think, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. I'm never going to learn this. But hopefully, if it's something worthwhile, you stick with it. And eventually you start to get more proficient at it. And you get to this plateau of sustainability, right? That's you being proficient at a particular thing. And every time I think I know something, I try and place myself on that scale of where do I really think I am? And this is where I think that combination of school and internship is really important, of being able to take those things that you think you know, that you've learned about in class, and put them into action in a real world environment. And it may be that you're not as knowledgeable as you thought you were, because you have maybe the book knowledge, but not actually the real world knowledge of how to actually put it into practice. And I think it's really important to find that balance, and also really important to be self-aware enough and honest enough with yourself to go, wow, I really don't know this actually as well as I thought I did. How do I get better at it?
Gabe, I love that chart. And I can honestly say, in the years I've been out of college now, I could definitely see myself on that chart in different aspects or in different projects, right? Like I wish we could throw that up on the screen right now for the people watching this, but
just Google Dunning-Kruger effect image and it'll pop right up. It's one of my favorite things, and I talk about it way too much, but it's just because it's one of my favorite charts ever.
I really love that, and one of the things we talked about again, Gabe, kind of over the past 12 months even, is shifting back into AI a little bit. And when I was in college, AI was around, but we never used it. We didn't really know anything. Like, you could go to different websites and, take a picture of your math and, it'll help you solve it, or things like that. That's how I, got through business calculus, the ultimate, class that I did not enjoy and have nothing positive to say. But I think back to even high school. We didn't have anything like AI in high school too. But Gabe, how do you think having these tools? We've talked about how we can use them in business or in marketing a little bit, and I've got some great examples of what we can do with them today. But like even going back to when you were in high school and college, but these are tools we didn't have access to. But how do you think that would have changed, your life at the time if you did have access to them?
It definitely would have been bad when I was in high school and college because I would have been way lazier and would have tried to use these things to cut corners for sure. So that would have been a bad thing for me. But now that I'm a little bit more mature, and I can be a little bit more self-aware about these things, the way I think about I think you and I both think about this, Zach, is AI tools are like having a really smart friend to bounce ideas off of. And you and I are both in sort of the content creation business, right? We're creating content now, whether that be, I create a lot of stuff for LinkedIn. I know you create a lot of stuff as well, right? Like we're both kind of trying to constantly come up with ideas. My old process would have been, I had an idea and it kind of kick around in my brain for a few days, and I'd walk around and I'd be thinking about it and I'd be kind of formulating how I want it to come out. And then a few days later, hopefully it would come out in, some sort of reasonable way, and I would share that with folks. Now what I do is I end up ideating with AI, right? So an idea pops into my head and maybe it's a little bit half baked, but you have that smart friend, whether it's an AI chatbot or something like that you can actually just have a conversation with and start to kind of kick around ideas. So Zack isn't always available for me to, send him a quick text message and have a conversation. But now I've got an AI tool that can help me do that too, where I can just have that quick conversation with my smart friend, in this case AI, that hopefully helps me ideate and come up with something that's a little bit more interesting.
Well, let's be honest. I'm always available, and I won't feel too bad that I've been replaced with AI. But Gabe, one of the jokes we had 12 months ago when OpenAI launched was, oh, we've got Gabe GPT over here, because now whenever I got stuck on some advanced Excel formula, Gabe's very good at Excel, whereas I am much better than I was, a few years ago. I'm dangerous now. I'm not like on the Gabe level, but I'm on the dangerous side. But to back to that point, I can now go into Gabe GPT and find my Excel formula, and take that, input that into the project I'm working on, and for the most part it's been very successful. So it's a great way to kind of have that assistant with you. Gabe, you mentioned bouncing ideas off it too. This is something I've kind of played with in AI a little bit, and I'm going to take a spin on this and really focus on kind of two areas of AI. One of those being I almost hate to say it, Canva, and the second being Adobe. And if you know me, the reason I'm, kind of on the fence with Canva is in high school, like I think of like doing like the posters on Canva, like the very basic, like I don't know anything about graphic design, here it's done kind of thing. Whereas now I'm very much into completing full branding exercises or projects within the Adobe suite. So nothing wrong with Canva, right? It's just the graphic designer in me likes to throw shade. But one of the things you can do with Canva now is utilize the generative AI capabilities and create realistic images. You can resize things. You can do all of these things by simply telling Canva what you want to do. So it kind of goes back to, I don't know how to do this, but I know how to ask for it. I know how to tell, someone or something, the AI in this case, what needs to be done. So Canva's done a pretty good job with the generative AI there. The second part of that, though, is really the Adobe AI. And Gabe, I shared some examples with you today. I put some text into Adobe's AI in both Photoshop and Illustrator. And in Photoshop, I put a photo of me in that was kind of cropped. I strategically cropped this photo, and I changed the canvas to be the size I wanted it to, right? So if you're building a project, think of like, your image is too small. You don't want to stretch it out. You don't want to, how do you resize this, right? So what I did is I put my photo in, cropped it, and then I told Adobe to resize it to these specific dimensions. And it totally did. It generated a whole new background. And Gabe, I sent you the photo. Did you know it was edited or in any way when I sent that to you?
It was shockingly good. Like, if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have known for sure. Now, the second one you sent to me, I definitely knew was AI generated. But the first one that you sent with the picture of you and then the sort of, generative fill behind it, that was quite good. It was very impressive.
Yeah, and to kind of walk people through what we did is the first photo was a photo of me from Christmas time, and it was pinned to a wall, and I cropped it down again, and then I just told it to expand. And what AI did, and this is all through Adobe now, is it added additional Polaroid pictures, tacked to the wall next to mine. It was very realistic.
Very.
The second photo though, and this is where the use case I gave Gabe may not have been ideal, but I again went back to Adobe and I said generate a scene. So again, a scene in this case on a blank canvas of outdoor Wi-Fi, and it gave some interesting results. The reality is it created these vectors that would have taken hours to do, if I had done them by hand. And while not like the highest quality, it still did them. I've seen videos of people online of generating like different icons or again different vectors within Adobe, and these are huge time savers, right? Like, it goes back to I don't know how to do it, but I know how to ask for it. That's the same thing here. Just that input into your AI, whether it's Adobe, whether it's Chat GPT or whatever that solution may be. That's really where I think you're going to see the most power of the tool. And again, the results you then get is going to be based on how you input data.
Well, I personally believe that the AI tool that we are all going to, or the majority of us are going to interact with the most is Microsoft and everything that's built into Office. Knowledge workers such as ourselves are using those tools every single day. And now Copilot is integrated into those tools, right? That is the AI, I'm using my air quotes here, that we are going to interact with more often than not. And that's the one I'm using the most now for sure, just because it is integrated into tools that I'm already using every day. It's fantastic to have that generative, the generative AI pieces, that Zack is talking about, but also just be able to have that smart friend to be able to kind of talk through with Copilot chat and things like that. So many different ways you can use that to ideate and analyze data, as you were talking about, Zack. If you're in Excel and you don't know a specific formula, asking in a natural language how to actually make that happen, that's huge. I will still say I think my proudest moments, like proudest life achievements, so like birth of my kids, wedding day, and day I got you to stop using VLOOKUP and move to XLOOKUP. So that was a really good day for me. So I'm really proud and happy that I was able to get you off the VLOOKUP and onto XLOOKUP.
I honestly think that the whole VLOOKUP to XLOOKUP is probably like top of the list for me, right? Gabe, like you had your top moments. That's a formula I use, like not to like totally derail this and geek on Excel, but like can we just take a second to appreciate, I don't know about you, Gabe, but like how often we actually use XLOOKUP in Excel
multiple
now?
times a day.
Oh my gosh.
Multiple times a day. It has saved me so much time.
It is almost my go-to formula. And at some point, Gabe, we have to do just an episode on Excel, because I remember the first pivot table I made at a previous role. I didn't know what I was doing, whereas now, give me 10 seconds and we can, again, be very dangerous in Excel.
I'm down for that episode. It will be the nerdiest episode we ever do, but I am into it. And actually, you know what? That's probably a good transition, because I strategically have not talked about my history at all up until this point. And I it's not that I'm avoiding the question, but we just got so excited talking about all this other stuff.
Well, so speaking of Excel.
Maybe I should tell a little bit about my history. So as Zack mentioned, I did not start my career in marketing. It's something that I have learned a lot about along the way, and I'm sure was at the peak of Mount Stupid in many cases, and hopefully now I'm getting to more of a plateau of sustainability. But my background, I've been at the company that we work at for a long time, a little over, actually just celebrated my 19th year anniversary, which always sounds insane to say. So it's been a huge portion of my career, obviously. Did work for a couple other organizations before that, but it's been a big part of my life. My career started in accounting and finance. That was where I spent the first probably dozen or so years of my career. Was in accounting and finance. I was analyzing financial statements. I was building budgets. I was building forecasts. I was spending a whole heck of a lot of time in Excel, which is why I'm really good at it. You do anything every day for that many years, you're going to get pretty darn good at it, and I got pretty good at it. And then a few years ago, I decided I wanted to try something very different and have moved into customer-facing roles. I spent some time in customer success. working with marketers. But something you mentioned earlier, Zach, that has been kind of a through line for me in my career, and something that I think I'm pretty darn good at, is understanding data and making that sort of that through line through my career, right? And that's something that accounting and finance background really gave me a super solid understanding of, is data, analytics, how to analyze data, what is it that you're actually looking for. And that's something that I've been able to kind of carry through. I'm not a creative person, right? This is why I think Zack and I get along, because we complement each other very well, in that, I'm very strong from a data analytics perspective. He's much stronger from a creative perspective, and he's gotten very strong from a data perspective too. But, I have just a lot more experience than he does, doing those types of things. So I feel much more comfortable with it. But that's how I kind of got pulled into marketing. And that's one of the fun things I think about marketing, right? Is, as we were talking about this episode too, Zach, I was thinking about the classic, I think it's from Spider-Man, where Willem Dafoe does the, I'm actually a little bit of a scientist myself. And I've seen the, meme of that, right? Where it's, I'm a little bit of a marketer myself. And I feel like a lot of people feel like it's an easy field to get into, and it's easy to do, and everybody has an opinion on it, right? That's probably a whole nother episode we could do.
It's not just creating Facebook posts.
No, it is that.
I say that because that's weirdly a question I used to get asked quite a bit. Social media, and we had to break down what we do on a day-to-day basis by percent. That's a very small percent.
Extremely small percentage.
And Gabe, I like the call out. You kind of made that bridge between working in accounting and finance to going into marketing. Is that a path you saw yourself going down, or did that just kind of happen one day, or how did you fall into that path?
Yeah, I definitely did not expect that I was ever going to be in this field. It was not my intention. It just sort of was a happy accident, to be honest. I started working for a group that was analyzing data for marketers, and I started getting really interested in what makes people act. And then from a data and analytics perspective, analyzing campaigns, really understanding, what compelled somebody to make a decision, right? And Zack, you and I have talked about this a little bit too, but the psychology aspect of it, I think, is fascinating also, of, what is it that compels somebody to buy a product or service, right? What is it that makes them decide that you are the thing that they need to purchase? There's so much interesting, there's so many interesting ways that can be leveraged, within marketing. And I'm fascinated by that. And so I've just tried to learn as much as I can, read as much as I can, intake as much information as I can. And it's, like I said, hopefully it's allowed me to, get out of the valley of despair into some level of, sustainability around knowledge of marketing. But it's been a lot of work. I was talking to for client, I suppose, but now he's really become a friend. And we were talking, this is probably like a year or two ago. And he kind of looked at me like a little bit surprised, or I don't even know what the right word is. Not disdainful, but just kind of like, man, when you got into this job, you didn't know marketing at all, did you? And I was like, no, I really didn't. And he was, was like, hey, look, well, good on you. You've taught yourself, you've learned so much. And I can, he was complimenting me and, how much progress I'd made. And it felt good, because he was right. Like, I was very not knowledgeable when I moved into this field, but I have taught myself a lot, and it's been through doing, right? And to get back to, kind of started this conversation, when Zack was talking about, internships and doing, and, how you can separate yourself for all these folks who are, coming out of school with marketing degrees and can't find a job. You need to actually do. And whether that's in an internship, whether that's starting a small business, or maybe partnering with a small business to, work on some of their marketing, these are great ways for you to learn, and can really teach you quickly what you're good at, what you're not, and then you can determine what it is that you actually want to pursue in some sort of meaningful way.
I totally agree with you, Gabe. So, talking about, your chart again, was your confidence high, though, when you went into marketing? Were you on the peak of Mount Stupid, as it was
100%. I was totally on the peak of Mount Stupid, because I didn't know enough to know that I didn't know anything, right? I was too stupid to not know. And I sort of made the mature joke earlier, but, I'll say it again. I'm hopefully self-aware enough now that I, can look back on it and kind of chuckle at myself a bit. But, yeah, at the time I thought I was really knowledgeable, right? And now that I look back on it and I go, God, I didn't know anything, I'm so much further along. Hopefully in 5 years, I'll do that same thing again. I'll look back at what I'm talking about now and go, God, that was all really stupid. Hopefully I'm a lot more knowledgeable than I am, at this point. But, it is that constant iterating and learning. And this is where AI, I think, can be really helpful too, Zach, because, it's not just turning everything over to AI to do your job for you, right? I think people are getting freaked out about, I'm going to lose my job to AI. You shouldn't be freaked out about losing your job to AI unless you're completely ignoring it and not using it at all, right? It should be an enhancement to the things that you're doing and make you more efficient in the jobs that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. It shouldn't be, let it replace some of the tasks that you don't like doing, and then leave you the freedom and the headspace to actually think a little bit more strategically about stuff.
That's a great way to put it, Gabe. And just to sprinkle one more way to use AI, we've talked about like the business use cases quite a bit today, but one of the areas I'm really interested, especially moving into the future, is how is AI going to impact our personal lives, right? Our lives outside of the office. And yeah, we've got tools like OpenAI, and we've talked about Google's Gemini AI and things like that. But, realistically, is that a tool you use in your everyday life, Gabe? Or is, I feel like I personally do not. I know a few tricks that I'd love to talk about, but Gabe, do you use AI in your personal life as much as you do in your professional life?
No, not nearly enough. Not nearly as much in my personal life as I do in my professional life, for sure. So professional life, I use it pretty much every day. Personal life would be very rarely.
And that's a an interesting take, and I do agree with you. Now I think we will see some changes there. One of the and I'm not going to call it AI, but one of the voice assistants I use the most is Siri, and I think adding some AI into Siri, which I'm sure Apple has done this, several years ago, and we're going to find out more later this year, ideally.
No, they're just going to integrate Gemini into their into the iPhones, and then that's done, right?
Yeah, but I feel like that's like a great way to get AI into people's hands. Not these websites you have to go off to, or these, there's dozens of apps. Like if you type in AI on the App Store, you're going to get an overwhelming number of apps. And the big question is, well, what do these do? What's the differentiation between these apps, and how can I use them? And it really comes back to, in your personal life, what is the goal of AI? Like, what goal are we trying to solve? Or what problem are we trying to solve? And one of the use cases that I wanted to bring up, as we talked about, how we've used this in our jobs, or how it's a good thing we didn't have this back in high school, because again, we would have been way too dangerous. Nothing would have gotten done.
Oh, bunch of things would have gotten done. They just would have been terrible quality. But
yeah, it's one of those things where like you'd write a paper and they'd be like, okay, who wrote this? Because it wasn't you.
Exactly.
that kind of situation. Yeah. But one of my favorite use cases of AI today, and I'll call that out as Gemini's AI. That's Google's AI, but it can summarize YouTube videos. And I'm one of those people like I like to skim videos. Like I can't sit down and watch a whole video. I don't have the attention span for that.
Such a millennial, dude.
Yeah, come on. But I like to use AI, in this case Gemini, to summarize YouTube videos. And it goes back to, Gabe, we were talking about the inputs, the prompts. What are you asking AI to do? And one of the things you can do is, make a bulleted list from this video. You paste in that video link, and it just does it. Gabe, I've told you about the case where I was taking like recipes like from YouTube channels, like cooking recipes, and having the AI just build like a recipe card out of this. And it's use cases like that I found fairly useful in my life, but I'm still at a point where my day-to-day AI use is 99% professional use, right? Like whether it's Excel, in Copilot, or, data analysis, or summarizing meeting notes, whatever the use case there is, that's been the primary use case. And even the Adobe examples I talked about, it's great to show those in an example. Am I afraid it's going to impact me? No. I mean, Gabe, you saw the examples too, right? Like if anything, it saves me time, but you still have to understand, the process and understand what it is you're doing. So I feel like we could have a whole episode on AI, but it's just super interesting.
We're gonna have many.
Oh
this
yeah,
is gonna be a hot topic.
Absolutely, and just going back to that original article, Gabe, that you shared in college graduates, specifically marketing in this case, and I'm sure other fields as well. Graduating, navigating the job field and having tools like AI, is it something you should be afraid of, or how are businesses actually utilizing AI? And I still do think it's a very powerful tool, and I'm excited to see where we go next. But back to one of your points, Gabe, it's just absolutely something you need to learn how to incorporate into your day-to-day life, really.
Well, if I were early on in my career, I would be very aggressively leaning into how to use AI tools to make me more efficient, right? And figuring out how I could get super efficient leveraging those things. I'm trying to do that anyway because I just want to be more efficient in general. But if I were trying to stand out in a career, trying to start my career, I would be very aggressively leaning into that, because that to me is the way that you're going to be able to differentiate yourself as you move forward and go through potentially a job search is, hey, I was able to leverage all of these things to, take something that would have taken 10 hours before and cut it down to an hour. If I'm a hiring manager, that's something that would be really exciting for me to see, is somebody taking the initiative to actually make that happen.
I love how you put that, Gabe. And, just to kind of bring the show to a close, we've talked a lot about AI and Gabe and I's backgrounds. But, Gabe, I'm going to ask you a question here. If you were not doing accounting, finance, marketing, anything you've done to this point, what would you be doing?
That's a good question. Like, what would my dream job be?
Dream job, or where did you see yourself? In elementary school, like what would you be doing if you were not where you're at today?
It's a good question. I mean, I've the one thing about being a knowledge worker is there's nothing tangible that you look back on at the end of the day and feel like you've like really accomplished or completed. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing actual physical to leave to leave behind. And when I was in school, I actually quit school for a year and I worked as a carpenter. I don't know if I've ever told you this story, Zach. So this may be a new one for you.
I think I knew of it, but I don't know if I've heard the details here. So I'm excited now.
So I was in school. I wasn't doing very well. Just didn't have a lot of direction, and decided that I just was like, you know what? I need to take a break. This isn't for me. And for whatever reason, I decided that I wanted to be a carpenter. And I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Like, and I just started, this will age me, Zach, and you'll think this is hilarious, but ads in the newspaper. And I just started going into the ads in the newspaper and picking up the phone and calling general contractors and being like, hey, I'd love to come out and work for you. Can I come out and work? And many of them told me, they were like, do you have any experience? No, like, I'm not interested in you coming out and working on my job site. But I finally got somebody to say yes. The guy said, come out tomorrow. And if I like you, you can stick around and you can come back the next day. I was like, sounds great. So I showed up the next day, busted my you-know-what, did as much as I could to show him that I wanted the job. He was like, cool, sounds good, come back tomorrow. And I did that for a year. We worked on one custom house for an entire year. And it was a really cool house, really unique, like just really fun experience. And I got to see it go from literally a hole in the ground to a completed house at the end of that year. That was probably the most fun job I ever had, because it was you were working with your hands, you were outside, like it was super fun, but really hard job. Like, I would look at the guys that were around me that were 35 or 40 and looked like they were 55 or 60 and didn't have health insurance and didn't make very much money. And, pretty quickly realized that, the long-term sustainability of this role is not going to be a good thing for me. So it was a nice kick in the butt that I needed to go back to school and kind of finish up and do the things that I needed to do to get to where I'm at now. But, that was a transformational job for me. And if it were putting aside all of the bad things about that job, that's probably what I would have been doing, because I loved it and I really enjoyed it. But like, there were all of the physical aspects of it, the bad money part of it, the no health insurance, like all of those things were, difficult, made it really a difficult way to make a living.
I love hearing that, Gabe. I was going to ask you how you see yourself using AI in that field, but I'm also thinking of, if I build a house, are you the guy that I call?
Oh God, those skills are so bad at this point, man. This was like 25 years ago. So, yeah, I'm generally really bad when it comes to that kind of stuff now, just because I haven't practiced those skills in a really long time. But it was fun. I enjoyed that job a lot. And, I don't know how I would use AI. There's a lot of math that you have to do in that job, actually. I would have checked that right there then.
It's actually funny. I think I made a comment about business calculus a few minutes ago as well. And as much as I hate on the maths, it's almost funny how often I use math in my day-to-day job, and maybe not so much math, but more statistics even. And my statistics professor in college, he was one of those people that said, like, day one of the class, this is not a math class, right? So like, I don't want to like, frighten anyone listening about like math and statistics, but statistics every day, and I've grown to really like it. So
literally every day, I'm like biding my time until I can go to my kids' school and just teach them all about statistics and like get fully nerdy on them. It's going to be a lot of fun. I need him to get like maybe a grade or two up from where he's at now, and then I'm going to be all about it.
That's going to be a dangerous day. The class either going to love you or be excited when you
probably
leave.
Hate me, but yeah, but it'll be
well.
fun.
Hey, how could you be mad at someone who's teaching the youth about Excel?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Oh man. Well, Gabe, this was a very fun episode. I don't
good
know.
to be back, Zach.
I was gonna say I don't know how you're feeling, but it's so nice to be back after the last year. We touched on AI at a very high level today. We finally had that introduction to who we actually are and what we do for the most part. So I'm very excited for the next episode. Gabe, I don't have a topic lined up, but what do you think we should talk about next?
I mean, it's probably going to be around AI, but we'll figure it out, Zach. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I would love to dive into like some actual use cases. I mean, I mentioned the dozens of apps you see on the App Store, all these different things and how to use them, but I'd love to like walk through someday how to actually use AI. Like how, we could do like a day in the life kind of podcast episode.
We're definitely doing that because I think, so many people, there's so much discussion about it, but not enough discussion about how to actually put it into action. So that's one of the things when Zach and I were preparing for this that we really wanted to put together as part of this podcast is how to take some of these tools and really put them into action and be specific about those things so that we can help people hopefully be more efficient in their jobs and not end up in a situation where they're just doing rote stuff that they don't want to do.
That's great, Gabe. I'm very excited to have that conversation with you. And as always, I'm excited for next week's episode. We're back on a weekly cadence, so tune in every Tuesday. I think we said on Tuesday, so Gabe, keep me honest, but tune in every Tuesday. Brand new episode on your favorite podcast app. So don't forget to give us a follow and get that notification when our next episode goes live. So hopefully on your commute if you have one, or listen to us throughout the day. But again, we'll be back weekly. If you'd like to subscribe on YouTube and get that video podcast as well, Gabe and I do these in person as well. So that's everything we had for you this week, but I'm excited to see you again next week.